They called him a monster, a fanged shadow that did not belong in a cage. But when Brutus disappeared for exactly 90 nights in the freezing forests of Montana, the truth he brought with him at dawn permanently shifted their world. Brutus had not been born as a dog. He was a 180-pound Cane Corso giant, forged from midnight and muscle, with fur as black as a universe where the stars had disappeared, and eyes carrying the violence of hell. His first owner, a man named Arthur living in the outer districts of a crowded city, wanted a guard. However, he did not realize that Brutus did not only protect him, but truly ruled him. Brutus would stand at the front door like a statue of a god, his rhythmic breathing like tectonic tremors, causing visitors to turn their cars back before even reaching the porch. He did not bark. He simply existed with such crushing gravitational force that Arthur's life began to shrink, his friends stopped calling, and the house turned into a high-security prison protected by a silent, furry god. Terrified by a loyalty he could not control, Arthur committed the greatest betrayal by taking Brutus to a cold, concrete shelter and leaving without looking back, while the dog's soul shattered in silence. Brutus did not whine or beg. He sat in that iron cage for months, his ribs wrapping his body like rusted steel, while his eyes seemed to imprison the soul of every person who passed by. But then Elias and Clara came, a couple who had newly moved to a rugged and isolated corner of the Montana wilderness where the wind howled like a dying ghost and local legends spoke of hunting packs ruling the night. They did not see a monster. They saw a warrior who had lost his kingdom. The shelter staff warned them that he was too harsh, that he was a volcano ready to erupt. But Elias looked at the massive wounds on Brutus's shoulders and understood that this dog had been created for a war they were losing against the wilderness. If these heartwarming rescue stories touch your soul, please subscribe. Your support means everything. Press the subscribe button right now. You will not regret it. Now, let us return to what happened in the next step. The moment they brought Brutus to the mountain, something in the atmosphere changed. He did not want to be petted or ask for reward food. By mapping every scent and shadow around the 50-acre land, with his paws cracking on the frozen ground, he began relentless patrols, each step like an earthquake. However, 3 weeks later, the nightmare began. When Elias woke up at midnight, he noticed that the porch was empty and that Brutus was gone. The dog returned only at sunrise, his chest rising and falling like a broken engine, covered in thick, dark mud, and with fresh, rough wounds seeping into his black fur. For 3 months full of suffering, the cycle of mystery and terror repeated itself until the air in the farmhouse grew heavy with unspoken fears. Every night between midnight and the coldest hour of the morning, 3 a.m., Brutus would merge into the darkness like a ghost and disappear into the dense, pine-filled canyons surrounding their home. And every morning, Elias and Clara would find him collapsed on the porch, his massive body trembling with a bone-deep exhaustion, his paws torn apart, and blood seeping onto the floorboards. They tried everything to stop this madness. They installed high-tech thermal cameras, but Brutus slipped through blind spots like a trained ghost. They tried locking him in the reinforced laundry room, but the dog's desperation was so primal that he clawed at the solid oak door until his nails shattered and his throat became irritated from low, guttural moans that came out like a prayer for help. Clara spent her mornings cleaning his wounds, tracing deep pits on his neck that looked as if they had been made by paws far larger than those of any stray dog. One night, while her hands felt the heat spreading from Brutus's injured side, she whispered to Elias, "He is not patrolling, Elias. He is fighting something. Out there in the darkness, he is fighting ghosts that we cannot see." However, Elias was writhing in pain at the sight of the weight the dog had lost, at how Brutus's once magnificent body had turned into its own shadow, reduced to a skeleton held together only by pure and painful willpower. Then, the bow that had been drawn tight for 90 days finally snapped like frozen bone. It was a Tuesday. The temperature had dropped to 20 degrees below zero, and the silence of the mountain was suddenly shaken by a sound that turned the blood in the veins to ice. This was not just barking, it was a symphony of predatory hunger, a chorus of howls sounding as if the devil were coming to the earth. A massive and starving wolf pack made of gray shadows had finally descended from the high peaks and were advancing toward the farmhouse at the speed of an avalanche. Elias grabbed his rifle, his hands shaking so violently that he could not hold the cold steel. But when he stepped onto the porch, he realized it was already too late. Glowing eyes were everywhere, a sea of amber fire surrounding the house, and in the very center of the yard stood Brutus, his 180-pound body seated like a statue of a god, his lips pulled back to reveal teeth resembling ivory daggers. The collision was of tectonic intensity when Brutus plunged into the heart of the wolf pack like a black arrow hurled from the depths of hell. The sound was deafening, the roar of a guard dog in a dance of teeth and fur confronting the primitive fury of the wilderness. Brutus moved with deadly grace. He locked his massive jaws onto the alpha wolf's throat and slammed the 150-pound predator onto the frozen ground with the force of a falling oak tree. He was an obsidian storm of rage, absorbing blows as if he were made not of flesh, but of granite. Within minutes, the pack understood that they were fighting not a dog, but a supernatural force that did not know how to retreat. Howling in terror, they scattered into the shadows. When silence returned, Elias found Brutus bleeding from a dozen wounds. However, his eyes were still fixed on the house, making sure his pack, his family, was safe. The next day, the sheriff arrived in astonishment. He has been fighting a war alone for months, he explained. He has been stopping this pack miles away and keeping them in the high canyons so that they would never reach your door. Clara dropped to her knees, finally understanding that his distant stance had actually been the greatest sacrifice. Today, Brutus is still patrolling the mountains, but he is no longer alone. He has the wounds of a king and the heart of a rescuer who proves that love is not always wagging a tail, but sometimes standing guard in the coldest hour of the night. What would you do if you realized your dog was a hidden hero? Tell me in the comments.